In this project, students will think about their identity to create a two-part portrait like this one. But before we get into it, let's go over some supplies. For this project, you will need Mylar, plain white paper, a printed out portrait of your students, magazines, coloring utensils, scissors, Sharpies, and glue. Before you start art making, it is important to discuss the works of artists who use identity as a theme in their work. Ask your students, what's going on in these images? What makes you say that? What about themselves are they trying to convey in these images? Try to get students to discuss what they see and try to interpret the story of the artist. Basquiat is an artist who uses identity as a theme in his work. He is known for his graffiti style and his expressive painting using scribblings, symbols, diagrams, and masks. A crown is often a symbol he uses in his work. This is both to acknowledge and challenge Western art by adorning Black male figures, including athletes, musicians, and writers. Ask students what symbols they might use in their art to depict their identity. Michael Reeder is an artist inspired by graffiti. His use of bold color, pattern, line, and realism are all influenced by the subject of identity. Ask your students what color, patterns, or images might influence their identity. Margot Humphrey is an American printmaker, illustrator, and art teacher. In her piece, History of Her Life Written Across Her Face, which is to the left, she recounts her personal experiences as an African American woman and artist. A bold and simplified self-portrait is overwritten with images, symbols, and script which retell her personal narrative. Ask your students what events or stories helped shape their identity and they would want to show in their work. To have my students begin thinking about their identity, I had them fill out an identity-themed ad-lib that I made myself to guide them to start thinking about their identity. What does this mean? What person, event, or social environment helped shape you into the person you are today? Do you think that will change over time? These were just a few questions to think about when filling out the ad-lib. Once completed, my students' ad-lib read, "When thinking about myself, I like to think I am very smart. When my friends describe me, they say I'm very kind. In my free time, I like to ride scooters. I like to do this because it poses new challenges for me. My favorite memory is when I learned to do a brief flip. This meant so much to me because I've been trying to do this trick for a long time. My dad is a person that helped shape my identity because he is good at building and it rubbed off on me. I think over time, being smart will remain a part of my identity. I think over time, being a good scooter rider will change about my identity." For part 1 of creating the identity portrait, I had my student go through magazines and cut out any words, images, or symbols that he thought could be part of his identity. Also, encourage your students to draw things that they might not be able to find in magazines or are very unique to them. These images, words, and symbols will be placed together to create a collage of the student's identity. Next, have your students glue down the images they have cut out of the magazines onto a blank sheet of paper to create the collage. While they are working or once they are done, you can ask them why they chose the images that they did. Also, be sure to encourage them to draw anything they had trouble finding in some of the blank spaces on their paper. Thank you.
I play baseball and it's my favorite sport. I played it pretty much my whole life. I also have played basketball for a long time. Dogs are my favorite animal and I have 2 of them. I put fireworks on here because my birthday's on the 4th of July, and I have a scooter on here because that is what I like to do in my free time. I like to ride my scooter and learn new tricks. I also love to go camping with all my friends and family, and I love pizza. I also have a tool on my sheet because my dad loves to build stuff, and I also love to build stuff with him.
Once the collage is finished, it's time for part 2 of the project, which is the portrait. Place Mylar over top of the printed image of your student. The student will use a Sharpie to draw on the Mylar, using the picture of them to help guide their drawing. Using the image of themselves as a guide can be really helpful to students who want to try and draw realistically but aren't as confident in their abilities. For students who are more confident in their drawing abilities, this gives them an opportunity to really focus on adding details and creating as realistic of a portrait as they can. Once the Mylar portrait and the collage are finished, you can place the Mylar portrait over top of the collage to create the final product, which is their identity portrait.